Several years ago, I was spending considerable amounts of time at the Hillman Cancer Center in Pittsburgh, as my mom would go there for weekly chemotherapy treatments, just about the entire day, as the chemotherapy was infused into an internal port she had located in her upper chest. Going there every week, and once a week, and spending there the entire day, I got to know all the nurses in that particular area, and they got to know me. And then they knew that, obviously, I was a priest, because I told them. And what happened, I forget this one day, a nurse came up to me, she said, "Father Ken," she said, "a fella 2 doors down from the room my mom's receiving chemotherapy in, 2 doors down, the man asked her if she would ask me if I would stop to his room and talk to him. He was getting concerned about his life, and he felt his life was coming toward an end." So I went down to his room, and we had a powerful conversation. Our conversation must have lasted about 2 hours. It was a very touching conversation. And then in a conversation, he was telling me about his problem, about his life, and he told me early on, several years prior to that, when he was first diagnosed with cancer, the chemotherapy treatment that he was receiving was, in fact, effective against that particular cancer. But unfortunately, his cancer had morphed into a monster. It was no longer effective. The chemotherapy regimen that he was now receiving also was losing its effectiveness. And he started to see his death in front of his eyes. And he started to worry. He started to reflect upon life. You see, every one of us here this morning, we're all going to die, and that's going to be a part of our life. But if you're healthy and you're doing pretty good, you might say to yourself, "I realize I'm going to die, but it's not going to be today, and it's not going to be this year. And I don't think it's going to be for some years to come." So you're not really sometimes reflective upon your own life. What does life mean? But this man was, because now his cancer was running rapid, and unfortunately chemotherapy was not working. And in the course of our conversation, he really came clean about something in his life. He said to me, "Father Ken," he said, "I made one big mistake in my life." Now, we weren't going to confession, so this was not taking place in the confessional setting. And I looked at him, I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "I made one huge, big mistake in my life." And I said to him, "What was the mistake?" And this is the answer he gave me right here. He said to me, he never lived in the now. He never lived his entire life in the moment. He just never enjoyed the now. He just never celebrated today. And I said to him, "If you never lived in the now, what do you mean by that? What kept you from living in the now, in the moment, in the present?" And then he looked at me with sincerity in his eyes and in his heart, and he said, "That was my big mistake. But what allowed me to make that big mistake, never living in the now?" He said, "Every day I focused on 2 things, and these were the 2 things he focused on every day. Every day he was regretting yesterday, and he would always be worrying about tomorrow." He said, "Constantly, I would always regret what happened yesterday, today, and every day I would always be worried about what's going to go on tomorrow. This is going to happen tomorrow. That's going to happen tomorrow. I never enjoyed the moment." He said, "My wife often would get mad at me. I'd be in the kitchen with my wife, and my wife would be talking to me, and she'd be waiting for a response, and I wouldn't respond to her. And then she would say, 'Bill, where are you? Where are you?' Physically, you're in the kitchen. You're right there on that chair. But mentally, you are somewhere else. Why aren't you ever here? Why aren't you here?" Your sons and daughters have always wondered, Dad's a tough guy to talk to, because when you talk to him, it just looks like what you're saying is just going right past him. He doesn't get it. So that was my mistake. For some reason, I focused on the regrets of yesterday, and I worried about tomorrow, and I missed the present moment to live in the now. How many folks are living in a now right now? Right this moment. Is your mind here? Now, physically, you're here because I see you. But are you here this morning? Are you listening to me but thinking about something else? That would mean you're not living in the now. When I continue on with this Mass and I get to that powerful consecration, are you going to be following those words and watching my movement and my action? Or are you going to be thinking about what's going to happen at 5 o'clock? You're here, but you're not here. You see, if you say to yourself, I'm going to Mass and I'm going to sit down in a pew and I'm going to participate in Mass, right now I'm going to focus on the entire Mass from start to finish. Then you're here now physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. You'll get something out of it. But if you're here physically and you're somewhere else, you're thinking about what happened yesterday, you're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow or later on this evening, then you're mentally not here. Mass won't be effective for you. You can't get something out of it if you're not here mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You see, that's the crux of today's gospel reading. Now, the gospel comes out of the 17th chapter of Matthew, verses 1 to 9. But what I want to look at this morning, because Peter in today's gospel reading is going to teach us a very valuable lesson. We're going to look at verse 1 and verse 4, the 17th chapter of Matthew. Let's take a look. Now, we're going to do verse 1, which is the part at the very top. First, Jesus took Peter, James, and his brother John and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. Now, as we know, Jesus had 12 original apostles, disciples. And Jesus realized, if I take all 12 of these guys on a little mini afternoon vacation, well, they're just, by nature, they're going to break down into small groups. That's just the nature of life. You got 12 people go into a room and they break down in groups of 2 or 3 or 4. What Jesus liked to do every so often so he could get real intimate with his disciples, to get to know them well, he always broke them down into small groups. If I take 3 fellas with me, 3 of my 12 disciples, every so often on little mini afternoon vacations, well, it's just going to be the 4 of us. They just really will break down into smaller groups. That's what he was doing here. So he takes 3 out of the 12 up on this high mountain. They're spending time together. They're enjoying each other. They enjoyed each other so much, and Peter was present for the moment. Peter was there. They weren't up on that mountain, and Peter was somewhere else mentally. Peter was up on that mountain with Jesus, James, and John, and they're enjoying each other's company. And Peter was so excited about hanging up on that mountain with Jesus. Look at what he says. Now, verse 4 then, we're going to pick up where I left off with the word Peter. So that's going to be verse 4. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, 1 for you, 1 for Moses, 1 for Elijah. What does he mean by that, 3 tents? What Peter is saying to Jesus, I want to make this a Kodak moment. I don't have a camera, and if I did, I probably forgot the film. But I want to make something that's going to last, a memory. So I want to build 3 tents, 3 monuments, 3 memorials to you guys. So that years from now, if I ever ascend this mountain, I'll look at those 3 monuments, I'll say to myself, oh, I'll never forget that day I was hanging up on a mountain with Jesus, James, and John. It was a great day. You see, Peter enjoyed the time they spent together while the time was occurring, not 5 years later in retrospect. How many people enjoy parts of their life only after it is over? You look back on it with fondness. But while you were living it, you were somewhere else mentally. You see, Peter was right. This is chapter 17. By chapter 20, controversially, 5 months later, chronologically, Jesus would begin to walk to Calvary, and Peter would stand idly by and watch. You see, Peter was right. He had no idea if the future was going to be better or worse. All he knew was right now was good. This is chapter 17. By chapter 23, compositionally, 5 months later, chronologically, Jesus would be crucified, and Peter, his buddy, would deny him several times. Peter was right. Peter had no idea if the future was going to be better or if it was going to be worse. All he knew is right now, right today, hanging out in this mountain with you, Jesus, James, and John. Oh, this is fabulous. I'm going to enjoy the moment, the now. And that's what he did. That's really the challenge for all of us. Now, you're here physically this morning, but hopefully you're here mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Hopefully you are here in this church with your mind, spirit, and heart, rather than being somewhere else. Peter was there mentally. So I went down to see this guy at Hillman Cancer Center, 2 doors down from my mom's chemotherapy room, and he said to me, Father Ken, I made one really big mistake in my life. And I can't undo it. And I know I hurt many people along the way, because despite the fact I was always there physically, mentally, I was always somewhere else. When I said, what was your mistake? He said, I never lived in the now. I never lived in the present moment. I was always somewhere else. And I asked, why? And he said, because I spent every day, for some reason, some kind of compulsive disorder, whatever it was, I spent every day, every waking moment regretting the past yesterday and worrying about tomorrow. I was never there for my family as I looked at it. I think the challenge for all of us is this. If you want to enjoy life, you want to enjoy Mass, you want to enjoy your family, you want to enjoy your friends, you must be there physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. You can't be there physically and somewhere else, mentally and emotionally. Enjoy the moment. Make sure you enjoy the present. And that's why they call the present a gift, because it is.